Hello and welcome to Permaculture of the Absurd. Today I want to talk about water harvesting. A lot of what I've researched mentions the importance of water management and suggests focusing on slowing water down and sinking it into the soil before trying to establish gardens and structures. The idea being that I may find the spot that I planted fruit trees becomes a marshy swamp once I slow water flow across the land. Now, originally I was intimidated about this. A lot of videos of tractors and swales and ponds, and I'm just one guy with a borrowed chainsaw and a set of clippers. So, let me show you what I've done. For this video, we need to understand how water flows across the land. Here's a rough sketch of where water enters from the north and the west. The white line is the drive path, and there's a culvert at the arrow. All the water meets on the land and flows off to the southeast. Water only flows during heavy rain events, like a couple of inches within an hour or so. It does pond up in places, but during dry spells, there's no surface water. Now, my main focus has been to clear this driveway from being overgrown by penciled cholla cactus. In cutting back this cactus, I ended up with a ton of branches that I needed to put somewhere to prevent them from reseeding on the ground. So here's where the water flows in from the property to the west, and it goes under a culvert here in the driveway. Now, the water, as it flowed across the land, had actually eroded right here a ravine, a trench that was about knee deep. So, thinking that cactus hate water, I went ahead and just started piling all of my cactus cuttings in here. Mountains of cactus cuttings all along this ravine. And what happened is actually the water slowed down, and instead of traveling and cutting and eroding into that, it actually spreads out now and pools in this whole area. And in fact, days after a rain, this whole area is still marshy and swampy to walk through. So a few days after a major rain event, I was out here walking around, and I actually noticed that the water was able to build up enough speed here to actually lay the grass down. So I took some dead branches and I just threw them across that water path there, hoping to kind of slow down this water before it gets to this head cut that had been eroding for what I assume is years. This head cut was here when I first walked the property, and in that little muddy area, water would collect there for maybe 48 hours after a rain event, just in that tiny area. So I started putting branches there, just filling it in as I cut a path to the cedar elm tree here in the distance. Everything I cut, I just piled into this ravine, this head cut. And now, after a rain, I mean, this whole place is just holding water and sinking it down into the soil. And I'm really satisfied with those results. I was sad to see a few years ago this cedar elm tree lose some branches in a major ice storm. In thinking about what to do with all the branches on the ground, I figured eventually over a few decades nature would just decay them and wash them downstream. Fortunately for me, this water channel is the same one I'd already been working on. So I cut the branches up and I came and I laid them in this ravine where the water actually was flowing so fast it was carving out an embankment and developing a sandbar on the other side. So I laid the branches in there where the heavy ends of the branches were where the water flows the fastest. And now as the water flows through there, it's going to hit those big branches and hopefully kind of flood that whole sandbar area. Water never actually collected here after a rain event, but now, days after an event, this whole area is still covered in water that's absorbing and soaking down into the soil. So, as I keep clearing branches, I'm going to keep making piles of debris along this channel, hoping to slow as much water as I can before it gets off the property. This next location is where the two water channels on the property combine and collect after a rain. Again, the water won't stay here for more than a week before it dries up. It's important to not only understand how water flows on the property, but also the watershed from surrounding areas. The water here is flowing in from the north. It comes from a 200-acre cornfield. And when I pan over here, this is the one I've been working on, and it comes from the west, and it flows in from a 30-acre homestead with cattle and horses. I don't get to explore the water channel to the north as often. It's farther from the driveway, and it's a much larger amount of water flowing over here. But when I was filming, I did notice the water was forming another head cut just a few hundred feet upstream. The water flows around the edge of this field, and in researching other water harvesting techniques, I think I'm going to try placing some one-rock dams to try to push some of the water into the middle of the field. A one-rock dam is just a single layer of rocks laid across the flow of water to try to slow it down. It should be simple enough for me to complete by myself. Where the head cut is forming, I'd like to try to create a zuni bowl. To make a zuni bowl, I will place rocks in a bowl shape where the head cuts are forming. This can prevent additional erosion as the water falling will splash off the rocks and pool up before moving downstream. Studying water harvesting techniques were originally intimidating, but spending just a few days moving brush into places where water flows across the land, I can passively slow and sink water into the soil, hundreds if not thousands of gallons all year long. I hope you found something beneficial in this video on water harvesting techniques in an established forest. Thanks for watching Permaculture of the Absurd.